All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Rook DAO status update, Friday, February 3rd. I'm Kyle, or What's the Deets? Glad to be back here in front of y'all. Today is going to be a good one. We have a little bit of a modified status update today. So we'll be covering the Q4 report at a somewhat high level. We will then quickly hit some highlights from the last 2 weeks with our typical DAO stand-up. And then we'll wrap up today, kind of focusing on governance, touching base on some of the drafts that were put on the forum this last week, and talking through any kind of questions or just objections that folks might have to any of those proposals. And then we can end it as we usually do with an open forum section. But for folks that are just kind of tuning in here, I've got my screen shared with our quarterly report, and I'm going to run through it relatively quickly today, kind of going section by section. If you have something you have a question on or anything, feel free to unmute and just get my attention, and we can address it then. If not, I'll be moving pretty quickly through, and so might as well dive right on in. Well, actually, typically we first start with just a couple bookkeeping items just to keep my structure the same. For folks, the last 2 weeks, I would just say the main items were just staying up to date on the forum posts from Governance Workshop and Treasury Tuesday. If you missed both of those, head over to rookbase.xyz as well. I got recordings of those calls. But outside of that, we'll just kind of be focusing on the quarterly report today. So let's get going. Starting off with the leadership update. I'm not going to touch too much on this. For us, we're continuing to build, and with that comes challenges and putting our heads down, grinding, focusing on shipping and iterating. And so really excited to see us continuing to build this last quarter. And as we kind of look ahead, we'll pause, kind of look through the metrics of quarter four. Quarter four saw about the same amount of volume as we did in quarter three. And if you want to check out the last quarter's metrics and reports as well, that's at the top of the Q4 report as well. And for folks just hopping in that don't want to follow along with the screen share, the link to the quarterly report is in both the announcements channel as well as in this call's chat as well. Metrics in terms of volume, about 23 million, around the same as last quarter as well, brings us up to a kind of to-date total of just shy of about 370 million in volume that's come through. Over 11,000 Rook has been bid as well. So here just some quick metrics on kind of protocol throughout, since the launch of the CG in April, and then Q4 metrics as well. Feel free to kind of peruse through those. And we'll now hop straight into the first part of the engineering update, protocol team update. So just kind of looking at the protocol team overall, continued to be static in terms of the number of contributors. The protocol team and the product team, and I'll get into this a little bit in the next section, continued to kind of work hand in hand a lot through this last quarter as well. There were some items that they were able to kind of collaboratively develop, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But really, this quarter was focusing on, or this last quarter was focusing on shipping the protocol upgrade for audit, and then iterating on any of the feedback with the auditors. And that back and forth was, going on throughout the quarter, and that process is very much at the end right now as well. So looking at the kind of individual items that the protocol team were working on this last quarter, the first one, obviously, as I said, the trading protocol, the protocol upgrade. A lot of what we saw through the kind of iterations with the auditing firm was around gas optimizations. And if you remember us talking about the protocol upgrade in previous quarters or throughout any of the development updates, we're expecting not only this new kind of trading protocol, a new contract, to be kind of like a revolutionary new type of way of swapping assets. We also expect it to be more economical, and there's been a lot of priority focused on gas optimizations. And so, as we kind of get it's called like a feature complete, a finished version of this out, we'll start testing out, and then we'll be able to start kind of looking at things like analytics and numbers into gas comparisons and other kind of metrics as a part of trading as well. These kind of end-to-end tests are just starting to be developed and worked on. The next kind of major chunk that the protocol team was working on is the coordinator. The coordinator, for us, that's the, like pretty much the linchpin behind our auction mechanism. And the coordinator, what we saw development on was really focusing on improving kind of performance and scalability with this piece of technology. What we want to be able to do is, as we look towards new products and more volume and more users and just more connections, kind of going through our ecosystem, we want to make sure that we're able to scale and handle everything with as much uptime as we can provide. A lot of those implementations in terms of optimizations and scalability, were a big focus during Q4. Another thing that's in the works, as well as, with the, the passing at the end of Q4 of KIP 35, which was the bid switch and the change in the tokenomics. The team started working on it and is continuing to kind of develop implementations of that bid switch and how that's going to affect kind of each area of our ecosystem, starting with the coordinator, but also, with Ninja as well, and working with the product team on kind of the web application as well. There was just a lot of different upgrades and optimizations and kind of cutting of old code that's kind of going a part of this, upgrade to the new protocol process that's through this. Next one, the Rook relay that's being built right now. As we teased in the last quarter's update, we were calling it Project Starlight. We'll continue to be kind of iterating on the branding and positioning of that product. But throughout Q4, this is still kind of going through a lot of internal testing and optimizing as well. One of the biggest focuses was making sure that as we continue to kind of work with partners and as we kind of understand their needs, we need to be able to handle their needs. And a lot of that has to do with scalability. So much like the coordinator, a lot of work was done on the relay to make sure that it could handle large volume in terms of like numbers of transactions going through it. And so, the relay has continued to kind of have kind of rigorous kind of, inspection of its processes and all aspects of its development to try and make it scale and as efficient as possible. With that, we're still building out documentation for integrations for kind of end users, for searchers that are looking to fill transactions through this as well. And that documentation is still being built out right now. If you want to kind of learn a little bit more about the relay, you can see the links from the report that go back to the Q2 and Q3 sections on that as well. Ninja upgrades, as I mentioned, kind of with the coordinator as well, there's a lot of aspects of Ninja that needed to kind of be overhauled a little bit as we get to the protocol upgrade. Ninja not only needed to kind of understand the different kind of bid switch as well with that, but a lot of kind of bugs fixes that needed to be kind of deployed for overall kind of stability of the bot as well. And just a number of different refactors that needed to be taking place. And as I mentioned, like there was some old code that wasn't as optimal anymore as well. That was kind of picked through. So a lot of kind of good insight into making sure Ninja is getting as kind of performance boosting as possible. And I know that they're continuing to work through that this quarter as well. And then just the last part from the protocol team is just adding and enhancing our infrastructure and our DevOps. And a lot of that is around kind of Datadog and, logging throughout, different areas of reporting throughout our technical ecosystem and aggregating those logs so that we can, kind of as quickly as possible, identify and troubleshoot any issues that come up. We know exactly where problems came from, and this is pretty much allowed our diagnostic ability of understanding issues to really kind of be improved. But with that, I'm excited to continue to see kind of the overall team working through each of these issues. All right, I'm going to move on to the product side of engineering here as well. And so, as I mentioned, at the start of this, the product and protocol team did spend a lot of last quarter kind of working together on various projects, and they're collaborating on different aspects of the relay. And as we talk about the protocol upgrade, one of the biggest things that we're really looking to improve upon is price data and price quoting to folks as well. And I know that both the product and the protocol team have been working really hard on let's call it like a price data project, where we have things around like our price API and the price is shown to users inside of the web app. All of that has a pretty complex path of being able to quote you the right or a specific price. And so that continues to be worked on, and as we kind of get towards the end of this development cycle, I know that that's going to be one of the things that they're going to be really proud of. I'm really excited to see our ability to kind of quote what I would consider probably one of the most accurate prices on chain. That's our goal of what we're building towards. And so I'm really excited to kind of see that project move through as well. Other areas of the product team, Starlight, as I mentioned, Project Starlight or the Relay, they've continued to make progress on this, in terms of having an MVP kind of UI ready. This was something that we had focused on to try and get something tangible in the hands of our partners as we continue to kind of talk through, longer term partnership opportunities for order flow and using of the new product. And so giving them actually something that they're able to kind of touch was a really cool project for the product team to take on as well. Now they've kind of shifted to focusing on building out more of the public facing side of that product as well, and that'll be continuing to be iterated on throughout this quarter. Looking at the trade app, the new swap protocol, they've continued to kind of build out new features and enhance different aspects of our web app. For us, really the focus is on making sure that the user really has an absolute top level experience from the way our app works as well. We know that some of that is, how the technology, interacts with the rest of the blockchain and everything in terms of making natural swaps and using the app. But in terms of what they actually feel and see inside of our app, there's been some solid progress made on that as well. And everything from, the information shown in the customizations of different types of orders being built out, all of that is being worked on by the product team. And then, as I mentioned, the price data project as well. And so I already talked about that a little bit, but again, our goal is to really try to provide the most accurate and best quotes available on chain. All right, and that is a wrap on kind of high level overview of Q4 on the engineering side. We're going to pivot over to the operation side, starting with a quick run through of the treasury. Some of this stuff has been discussed at Treasury Tuesday, and so I'm really going to kind of touch on some of the more high level points of this. I'm not going to get into every individual little kind of investment of the DAO and position, but I'll really try and point out what I felt like were the biggest takeaways. So, as Matt has presented here for everybody, the financial position of the DAO continues to be very strong. Our treasury, at the turn of the year was around 43, just shy of $44 million worth, of which almost 26 million was in stable coins. So Matt's got his breakdown of the value of each asset here and our total here. If you want to look at different charts and visualizations for our assets, Matt's done a great job of providing that for a lot of folks as well. One of the things that was really interesting from this report was looking at where our assets are, and so with kind of I would say kind of the rolling up of separate kind of individual investment, let's call it projects and proposals that we've taken on throughout all of 2022. Many of those have kind of wrapped up, and assets have mostly been fully returned to the treasury. And so what we've seen is that most of our assets are still residing inside of the treasury. Really, the main portions of stuff that reside outside of it is going to be our liquid staking derivatives, which are relatively easy to swap back into ETH and keep in the treasury. And then the only other assets outside of the treasury are assets in Sablier that have been deposited to be streamed out to contributors, as well as assets being used in the testing wallet. And so the testing wallet, I think we'll get into that a little bit later. But outside of that, everything is kind of well housed and protected within our multi-sig. All right, we'll skip through assets by location. Looking at the DAO deliverables, in case any of you guys haven't clicked, I'm not going to go through each of these and click through them. But if you haven't, Matt's team has put together a lot of great either dashboards or write-ups on our assets. And so, clicking through those, you have our Dune page, our Rook ecosystem page, our liquid staking derivatives dashboard. The stablecoin testing project has its own dashboard. So a lot of great dashboards have been made to really kind of continue to stay on top of and visualize all of our financial positions. So I would just encourage you to kind of click through there. And if you ever wanted to request a new dashboard or have an idea about, why we're not looking into certain types of information around our assets or financial position, feel free to reach out to a member of our treasury team. We got Matt, I know 50's here on the call as well. And they're great to work with and happy to answer any questions as well. Treasury management activities, Matt highlights through kind of risk tolerance and our rationale for how we mitigate risk in the DAO. But there were some actions that still took place throughout the quarter, just the kind of high level ones. The first one, the ETH staking and continuing to fill out our LSD positions. And so, we see just shy of about 8,000 ETH that has been put into that position as well, into a liquid staking derivative, whether it's at Lido, Rocket Pool, or Stakewise, then that breakdown can be found in the report as well. Another one was the M-Stable save, we added a second tranche of about $500,000 to that product. If you were not at this Tuesday's Treasury Tuesday or haven't seen the announcements from this week, we are actually settling on a proposal to kind of terminate this position. And a lot of talk went into that, why that is happening, both on Tuesday and on Wednesday at Governance Workshop as well. So I would encourage you to go check those recaps out or listen to the recordings as to, specifically all the reasons that Matt highlighted as to why this proposal is coming out now. As I mentioned, we talked about the liquid staking derivatives, solid effective APY, well over 10%. The M-Stable product actually had been performing extremely well as well for just a stablecoin deposit of getting around a little over 4.5% as well. So solid performance on those assets as well. And this is a look into each of the individual liquid staking products. So you have SE2, RETH, and STETH. If you want to dig into each of those individual sections, feel free to find them in the quarterly report as well. The last part that I'll talk about quickly is just the other initiatives and programs. As I talked about before, the stablecoin testing wallet has been really interesting to see, how stables swapped through the coordinator, and what happens with that, and understanding kind of the volatility of each of the stable coins and what affects kind of the ability to swap between them at exactly kind of a 1-to-1 ratio. For us, it's been really interesting. We've seen, pretty much an effective gain of on our assets for just solely, swapping 1-to-1, and that's, receiving whatever rebate through the coordinator as a part of that as our APY. So, we've accrued just shy of like 95 Rook through just kind of these stablecoin swaps. And if you haven't kind of dug into any of the data behind that, I think it's really interesting. You'll see fills that are almost a full amount in the hundreds of thousands, and you'll see, $2,000-$3,000 fills, all of them receiving kind of varying levels of rebates back on them. So it's a really interesting, it's a really interesting kind of test that we're running here, and I know that we're looking to expand that as well, and that was talked a little bit about in Treasury Tuesday this week as well. But just another interesting program there. The last little parts of the Treasury report, the stablecoin research continues to be ongoing. And then Matt's walkthrough of contributor expenses. You'll see that we headcount was reduced by just 1 in the last quarter. And then Matt talks about personnel by function as well as total compensation annualized as well. So right now, our annualized or our compensation over the last year was just shy of about $6.8 million. And then Matt has it broken out by each of the individual levels and positions. You'll see that, these numbers aren't for one individual person. They're divided equally by the number of people that are at that level. And so that's how you'll find out individual compensation for anybody as well. And then Matt's got our running compensation expenses, and daily payments for Rook as well. Matt then now has kind of re-updated our runway and showing that, looking at about a little over 4 years worth of runway on the USDC stablecoin side, and on the Rook side a little less than that. The last part is the Rook Labs budget activity. This was another item that was talked about at Treasury Tuesday and a little bit at Governance Workshop on Wednesday as well, renewing the Q1 budget. But looking at Q4, I would say the biggest highlight of this were 2 things. Number one was that, the labs team stayed well under budget on a number of items, except for one very specific circumstance, which Matt went into earlier this week regarding AWS costs for the year that weren't that weren't shared with the DAO until very kind of late in the year, and so we accounted for that. But outside of that, you'll see that our budget and actuals for labs has tried to stay well under budget and continue to roll forward funds to the next quarter if necessary. And so for us, we're really trying to be as diligent as possible for spending funds properly and making sure everything is accounted for and relayed back to the DAO. You'll see that the breakdown of how kind of labs funds were paid out over the last quarter as well. And so if you want to dig into any more of the labs kind of funds activities, there's links there at the bottom. All right. I feel like I've been talking for quite a while straight, so I'm going to take a breath here. We'll pause. Does anyone have any questions or anything right now so far through the engineering or the treasury side before I get through the last bits of the org side? Great. All right. I'm going to keep running through. I feel like I've been running long, so I might go a little quicker through these last sections. On the growth side, with Troy and myself, this last quarter has really been hammering down conversations with a lot of these partners, especially around the Relay product. For us, as I mentioned, in the product update as well, getting an MVP into their hands and continuing discussions with their teams have been really productive this last quarter, and we're continuing to discuss kind of interesting ways of value capture and ways of optimizing our products and things that these partners want to see. So these ongoing conversations have really taken much more of kind of a technical turn in the last quarter, but we're still really excited about where things are landing there. The other side of growth was just the wrap up of the official wrap up of the pilot program. And while the market maker pilot program had ended earlier in 2022, it was the keeper side that wrapped up this year. You can see all the actuals through this and the more detailing in the Q3 report as well. The TLDR on that was that we spent just over about 16,000 Rook on the program between both market makers and keepers. And that Rook was withheld from the participants until the end of the program, and then it gets streamed over 6 months. So really, doing what we can to make sure that Rook doesn't all kind of land, circulating all at the same time. And for us, it's I really personally just want to thank all the participants of that pilot program. It was great working with each of them, and the discussions and conversations we had with them were really great. Scrolling through the next section on the org side, just kind of organization overall. We continue to see, overall organizational development. Compensation what was a focus at the end of Q4 as well, and it'll continue to be ongoing with research around that as well. We're also looking at kind of workplace improvement projects, things like development workshops. Those are all still kind of being planned out and built out by the org team. And then one of the other fun takeaways from Q4 was the offsite in October, where most of our contributors got together, did a lot of planning and forecasting and looked through our products, and really also just got to kind of break down through what I would consider your standard barriers of remote working and really getting to know the other contributors. And for me, I'm such a in-person energized kind of person that I love to see kind of ideas and conversations that take place in person. So I think it was really just an invaluable opportunity for the labs contributors, and I think that we'll see what the org team kind of plans for this upcoming year as well. Leapsum, so as in contributor feedback surveys as well. We had another one. this last quarter as well. We kind of highlighted, the survey kind of addressed some of the questions brought up at the offsite in terms of how the organization was going and how decisions were made. And so for us, continuing to survey our contributors and understand where they are, in terms of, emotionally, how they feel about feedback, how they feel about the work they're doing. I think that these are all important things to kind of understand for folks. And then, as I mentioned, the operations, while I said that, we had reduced a little bit of headcount this last quarter, we're continuing to kind of reorg how operations is going to make sure that, we're kind of more representative of a kind of flat, cohesive organization, with kind of, the various operations teams really consolidating into one to make sure that there was, continued solid communication between teams, that all aspects of projects and initiatives and goals were visible. And for me, it's been great. I love working with each of the members of the labs team, and really our goal is to just continue to try and be as efficient as possible, continue to get the work done. And so, I'm continuing to support this initiative, and have been really happy with it. One of the things I mentioned in terms of the org team was kind of looking at compensation. I know that we're continuing to look through kind of like a very deep, comprehensive, like, industry data set as well. And we want to make sure that, compensation continues to fall in line with market, and a lot of research has gone with that, and that, roles kind of align with that as well. So that's going to continue, and I'm excited to kind of see the fruits of that work coming out. And then this is just our overall contributorship. I don't need to kind of dive into everybody individually, but you can see where everybody's at there in our roster. Looking at community, I think we just have two more quick sections, so I'll go kind of fast. We kind of rolled out the last of our Discord enhancements throughout Q4. One of the big highlights that I think has been working really well is our support ticket system, really making sure that anybody having any issues, whether a kind of legacy or current app or anything else, for me, I've been really excited to have like 100% resolved support situation status throughout the entire quarter. And so for me, this was a way to not just kind of track and make sure that anybody's issues were dealt with, but this also really felt like a dedicated space where folks were able to kind of, discreetly share information that maybe they don't want to share in a public support channel, and really helping to get individual attention to folks that need help. And so for me, I've actually thought that has been really beneficial. Conference attendance, one of the big things that I had been kind of planning this last quarter and looking to, really kind of hit a home run with is ETH Denver. I'm really excited about, we're less than a month out now, and building everything out from the booth to the presentation, getting swag ready, looking at ways that we'll be, kind of marketing our presence. It's been a solid, solid undertaking, a pretty big project, and I'm excited. So for any of you folks that'll be in Denver at the end of the month or in early March, feel free to DM me or find me, and I'm excited to be there and interact with everybody. And I think what we'll wrap up with is just looking at the studio team. And so focus for the studio team has really been on documentation, especially on the biz dev side. And they've been working hand in hand with Troy and Hazard, especially for a lot of the partnership conversations that have been going on, and making sure that we have clear documentation with great visuals, and a big shout out to Watts on a lot of the work around that as well. But what we've been planning on and continue to kind of build out is preparing for product launches and preparing content and schedule and really just announcements and everything else that's going to go into kind of a successful launch of our products and building that out. But that's been an ongoing process, and we'll continue to kind of be prepared and ready to ship when we get the green light. And then I want to wrap up the Q4 report, as I don't do enough, with another solid shout out to the Starbase team. Donica and Tradium and co continue to be awesome. Rook Base, it continues to be the home for all of our recordings and recaps for all of our calls. Utmost professionalism from the both of them, and so just a big thank you. And I think that they are a model for anybody that's looking to be a kind of community contributor or look for ways to contribute to DAOs. The way that always all of my interactions with them have been extremely professional, and so I would just point to them if you ever were looking to try and get a start. Maybe take a leaf out of their book. But that will go on ahead and wrap up the Q4 report. So why don't I go on ahead and pause? Does anybody have any questions from the Q4 report or anything else? I know I went through a ton of information, so I'm happy to kind of pause here. Great. Well, I will then just kind of get to the rest of my agenda from for today's call. So the first part was just kind of looking at a quick stand up from the last 2 weeks. I'm just going to say a quick couple words on that, and then we'll get into the governance side as well. So at least just from the last 2 weeks, from the engineering side, we're continuing to see work done on the relay and the trade app. One of the things I mentioned, last update and continue to be built out is like a new way for folks to claim, their MEV from, using our products. And so that's being built out. New charting tools inside of the web app and building out that price quoting, as I mentioned, from that price data project. They're just continuing to grind at that as well. One of the big things that I continue to see is this coordinator work and getting it ready for integrating the new protocol. And it's not something technically that I have much mastery on, but I continue to see them discussing and working through it. And I'm excited to see that coordinator continue to get developed. On the ops side, as I mentioned, ETH Denver was a big priority for us in the last 2 weeks. We're less than a month out, getting everything shipped out to the Denver area and get ready. So really excited about that. We've also been kind of building out some more documentation as well. And then really just tons of treasury work in the last 2 weeks. Really, really great stuff by 50 and by Matt. You saw all the kind of kit proposals and information that came out around that, the stablecoin product that was discussed a little bit, as well as the usual kind of end of month accounting, the weekly treasury report. And then if you missed it at Treasury Tuesday, discussion about the DeFi roundup. And so if you didn't hear about that on Tuesday, we're excited to see kind of the treasury team take on different aspects of DeFi and explain them and work through them and research them and present it to the community. So, if there's more questions on that, I'm sure 50 or Matt would be happy to chat with folks on that as well. I would say if you have ideas around DeFi roundup or anything else, feel free to post it in the treasury section here in the Discord. All right. Well, that's the stand up. I'm going to bring us to kind of the last part of our call here today, which is looking at governance. And maybe Jason or Hazard, do either of you have a specific proposal we want to quickly touch back on or start off with for any of the governance issues here?
Nothing in particular. I guess since we're talking about the quarterly report today, and you've done such a great job in summarizing that, I would point people to the two of the most recent proposals which have gone online, which build directly off of this. And those have to do with reauthorizing leadership and with the budget that Matt and his colleagues on the Treasury team have put together.
Great. Well, starting with the KIP 26 extension, as we talked about on Friday, and I expressed my support for it, I would like to see, this go through. There hasn't been anyone bringing up any objections to this. If you did have thoughts on that, I'm welcome to share them here now. I don't see anything on the forum in terms of comments as of now, but happy to pause here if anyone wants to talk about KIP 26 extension. All right. On the flip side of that, looking at the Q1 2023 labs budget request, I was going to also just give anyone an opportunity to comment on this, object, or support. I'll go on ahead and drop this in the chat as well. I'll drop the previous one in the chat as well for anybody that needs it. But did anyone have any thoughts on Q1 budget request? Quiet group today. I will say that one thing I would highlight from the budget request is just that you'll see a lot of our East Denver stuff landing through here. And that's, not too much other stuff that really needs to be highlighted from it. It's pretty bare bones, pretty straightforward. I know Matt did a great job of making sure we stuck to the essentials for this. So anybody on Q1 2023 budget request? All right. Well, I know that the last one I wanted to get to was something I talked about in the report recap, which was the termination of the M-stable position. I just posted that in the chat as well. As I said, I guess the TLDR on this was that M-stable as a funded protocol is having some financial uncertainty. What that doesn't impact is the actual positions in their pools and how their protocol operates. There seems to be some uncertainty around their token and runway. And so there was a lot of discussion on their governance forums around it. And Matt's individual conversations with the M-stable team led him and 50 to discuss this. And I think 50 drafted up this position of terminating our position based off of those. This isn't so much a commentary on the viability of the M-stable product or even our experience with it. I would say that the performance and use of this product has been fine. This is risk management is my understanding of why this is happening and making sure that we do everything in the best interest of the DAO. So does anyone have any thoughts on or objections or support for returning the M-stable position back to the Treasury? All right.
Yeah. Hey, Dietz, can I just add something on here? So
of course.
As you remember, we talked about this at Governance Workshop this week, and that was a follow-up to 50 making a great presentation of the whole proposal on Tuesday. And one of the things we talked about was, given the nature of this proposal as a risk management proposal that has, I wouldn't say urgency to it, but there's a time factor in terms of getting this done. We talked about using this as a test case for how to run an expedited process. And so far, and put notes about that on the forum and in Discord so people can check that out if they want. But what we're talking about doing and what everybody seems to be comfortable with is we've now talked about it at 3 workshops this week. It's been presented in detail. We've had no pushback, no objections, no concerns, no requests for clarification. So the next step is talking about it with the SOFONs. It's been previewed with them, and they're actually on board with it as well. So unless anybody has any objections, we're planning to go to a vote with this on Monday.
Thanks for the reminder, Jason. I appreciate it. And, I will say that, as you mentioned that, time isn't as much of the factor. If we look at, as we discussed on Wednesday, the last time that we did a KIP to terminate a position was with around the Maple position, and that had much more of a kind of counterparty risk and time is of the essence situation around it. For this, what I found was that the imp stable team was great to work with. They were very understanding. They were supportive, and got every reason why we would pull the funds. They weren't upset or tried to sway us the other way. So, support from the native protocol, and just, I would say that us continuing to act out of an abundance of caution to keep the interests of the DAO protected. I would fully support this. Right. Well, was there any other governance items anybody wanted to bring up or discuss while we still have this as a topic for the call today? Right. Well, pretty successful proposals then. I believe that kind of wraps up all of my written agenda for the call today. Happy to pause, just kind of open forum. If anybody's got questions, happy to answer anything. But outside of the designated content for today, I've reached the end. So has anyone got any questions, comments, observations? Shahar, I see you unmuting.
Yeah, muted. What is the blocking work for the two major product releases? What are the blocking factors?
Well, there's a variety of them. So there is audits. There is also performance testing and end-to-end testing that needs to happen. And with that comes a lot of optimization that happens. There's several large software merges that need to happen. Those aren't the end of the world, but those can take some time. There's integration for searchers and other actors, as well as with for Ninja. I think Kyle mentioned some of it. We've changed some new protocols. It takes time for folks to integrate with those. Not a lot of time, but that's a factor. We want to make sure there's a good service level. And then there's also end-to-end testing and so on once those integrations have been completed in some kind of limited release period prior to sort of a full public launch. We also want to make sure that we have all of the content and marketing channels and so on sort of lined up by the time that we're ready to go to launch. And then, of course, any sort of issues or regressions or unforeseen things that pop up during this period of end-to-end testing, limited production release, those can sometimes, take an hour to resolve. Those can sometimes take a week to resolve, depending on the complexity of what needs to happen. That's why we try to keep things fairly loose in terms of the exact dates when we're doing things. So none of these are really sort of blockers. They're just sort of the things that you do at the end of the development cycle, which is where we're what we're kind of nearing right now.
So a lot of that stuff is happening concurrently. It's not the only thing that, it sounds like the audit might block other things, but
in a sense it does, but when you do an audit, there are changes that you tend to make sometimes, but they're not so great very often that you need to sort of completely rethink what you were doing. So there will be contracts on mainnet that can be used for testing and so on. And the majority of the audit work, we feel that things are mostly stable. So at the moment it's not something where we can't really proceed. So yeah, I mean, these things are all happening concurrently. Every day there's progress made on each of these work streams. Yeah. And it's also sort of a question of like, when is it good enough, right? And there's many things that kind of have, there's some kind of, I don't know, like a learning curve or something, or an improvement curve that sort of starts to give diminishing returns at a certain point. So things like performance optimization, the quote performance, how many integrations you add, so on and so on. So the marginal improvement that you get from the next fix or the next thing you do gradually gets smaller and smaller until it's sort of time to say, good enough, time to go. And we're trying to move it as quickly as possible into a limited production, and take many forms, and then from there to go to a wider release. And this follows the same logic that we did with the coordination game in last April, that you've seen in most of the quarterly reports, which is to launch and then iterate. And that's what we're going to try to do as much as possible, of course. And but there's some more moving parts this time. It's going to make the system better, but that's led to more work streams and so on. But yes, everything is happening concurrently.
That's some great information. I appreciate that, Hazard. So if I could give some critical feedback, right? That's the type of information that people want to read in the quarterly report. I think you guys saw, right, the reaction of the community after the quarterly report came out, which was a lot of kind of anger, because there was very little substantial info in there. And then, you scroll to the bottom and it's like we're burning, 5-6 million a year. So that gets kind of baffling. And I, having been on the inside for a while, like I kind of understand that, and I know where we're coming from and what all, the complexity of what we're working on, but we just need to do like a lot better. If that is someone's first touch point seeing this project, right? If they're just like, oh, I want to catch up on Rook, I haven't, been paying attention for a year, and they read that Q4 report, right? It's going straight into the wastebasket. Okay, that's just honest feedback. We need to have more of the level of detail, like what you just said, Hazard, or frankly, like your discussion in the Discord with DCF God a couple days ago, right? There was lots of great information in there. It really is confusing to me how none of that really made it into the Q4 report, and instead the Q4 report felt like just a bunch of platitudes and kind of high level, like, just hearing Dietz, go over it again, right? There's just nothing substantive there. Oh, we're still working on this, right? We're working on integrations. We're talking to partners. That is not information, right? And to an outsider, it even looks really bad, right? It looks like almost like obfuscation, especially when you combine it with our burn rate, right? It doesn't look good. So, that's my feedback. The reports, the readouts from the work that we're doing, it needs to be a lot better if we're trying to really, make more of a splash and get people to take us seriously. I would encourage, perhaps, maybe we can bring back like what we had leading up to the coordination game release, where you guys made that really nice, kind of chart, not a Gantt chart. It didn't have timelines on it, which is fine. I mean, obviously it would be great to have some timelines, even if they're soft timelines, but I understand the challenges there. But to have that kind of checklist of everything you just said, Hazard, here's the real work and the different work streams that are being worked on, and then, you can just follow along with the progress. And that's very transparent, and it makes it look like, which I know is true, all of the real complex work that's being done. So, that's my kind of snap feedback from the Q4 report. And, I think a lot of the community kind of felt that way as well. So yeah, I'll just stop there. I really hope you guys kind of take that to heart. We, in this environment, where we haven't shipped anything for quite a while, and obviously, the tokens trading at such a huge discount to NAV, and all of these challenges, right? I mean, we have to prove, to outside people that we are serious and what we're working on is really next level. And the Q4 report just did not do that. It didn't do it.
Yeah, I hear you. This is something we talked about in an internal discussion, actually, about exactly what you said. So I'm actually really glad that you mentioned that, and I'm in full agreement with you that I think one of the better communication techniques that we've used, in the last year or so, is that checklist, right? Which sort of allowed us to take the issue of, for understandable reasons, not necessarily wanting to give like simple timelines or roadmaps, because that creates a lot of friction, but to give kind of a checklist that shows where are we now, and when we know where we are, we can click that box. And that was really successful. I agree with you. And it was not just successful for the community. I think it was also very simple for the team, because, if you ask somebody to give a time estimate or a where are you estimate and so on, it's like it gets to be all over the place. That's true not just for public comms. It's true for, as many of you probably know, it's true for private comms too. Like, people genuinely, it's hard to be certain when things will be sort of completed sometimes. But just being able to go and click a box is very simple and easy. And you do know that you're working on this thing. And when it's done, you check the box off. It's easy to maintain, and it doesn't take a lot of time. So I agree with you. And I think maybe we need to set one of those up. And to be honest, I think we could maybe do, rather than just set one up for products, we could set one up, or ones up for, most of the things that we do. Because it's just a effective way to let people know what's going on.
Yeah.
It would have been cool to have that from the beginning of this development cycle. And then as things get added to this thing, you see them show up as unchecked boxes, and they get checked off and so on. Fortunately, we didn't do that. I wish we had.
Right.
I agree with you.
Well, I'm glad. I would think, you guys would have something like that internally, right? Your track, if you have,
that's where my mind was going too. So we use a tool called Linear, and in fact, some of the I know these status meetings and some of the content in the quarterly report are distilled from weekly status notes that are the teams are required to submit for review, as well as we have tracking and so on of tasks and such on Linear, as well as in various repositories. And so it's
right.
Somewhat.
So what I'm getting at, it shouldn't be a big lift, right? And I think you're seeing this too, to just do that, and it's way more effective than what the level of communication that was in the Q4 report. And so it's just a little frustrating. The Q4 report took a long time; it's like a month late, right? I don't know what all the time was being spent on after seeing it, because it's like there's nothing really substantive in there. It would be way more effective to take probably 2 hours of someone's time to translate the internal tracking tools you guys are using for your sprints or your dev cycles or whatever you're doing, and just translate that into something that can be shared publicly. And that is way more information. It looks way more professional. It's right. I mean, it's better. It's just so much better optics. I don't know. This project has had an optics problem for a long time, and so I'm just trying to give you guys some perspective on easy wins, right, that we could do to make it better. But I appreciate you hearing the feedback. That's what I'm here for.
Thanks, Shahar. Appreciate it. All right. Does anyone else have questions, comments, or anything else? All right. Well, we'll go on ahead and wrap up today. I would say stay tuned for any announcements on the governance side. Maybe by the start of next week, maybe a little later than that. But if not, we'll see you back on the other side of the weekend, at least on Tuesday, for DAO office hours. But for everybody that stayed here with me and sat through, and Shahar, especially for the feedback, appreciate it. Thanks. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I'll be around in the Discord if you got any other questions or anything. But thanks, everybody, and we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.